it's a handful of things as we approach probably what's the last days, literally. Um, some things that just were on my heart, and I haven't had a chance to do a video in a while, so it's a handful of things here. They're just kind of like the last things I want to get straight. And I put a bunch of capital letters on this, if this timeline that I believe is correct is the right version, then um, it's probably down to the last video here or two. And so I just wanted to put some last things out here. And if it's wrong, I'll happily be back in a few weeks and do some more. But for those that uh, haven't seen my videos, um, some of the last couple of videos I've done were on different topics, like allegories and the like. But I did do a video or two here looking at this graphic we got up on the screen here, which is from a gentleman named Reese Wise. He's on Facebook under that name, and he's on YouTube under I Go Too Slow for You to See Me. And we took a look at this and we did an overview, which several people have picked up on today and just commented, and I appreciate all the comments, feedback. It's encouraging, when you find like-minded people. So I'm not going to drill into this as much as I just popped it up in case you want to freeze my video here and just see a timeline that I think, let's just put it this way, it's a very plausible framework. And if we all happen to be here well into this timeline and these events haven't happened, well, I guess we're just going to have to go look for another framework. But this is my working hypothesis right now. We've got very likely the Jewish year 6000 starting here on April 1st. We got the blood moon tetrads, or tribulation tetrads as some people are calling it now. We've got the moon going to blood and the sun going dark, as it states in Acts 2:20 and Joel 2:31, before the day of the Lord. And very potentially we have the day of the Lord beginning on the anniversary, the 66th anniversary of Israel being recognized as a nation. 1948 was that happened, and now on May 14th, 2014, like I say, the 66th anniversary potentially is the start of the tribulation. So that's why I say this might be one of the last videos. Could be wrong, and I don't want to get too wound into any one particular view, but this is about the best I've seen, so I'm going to bring that up. So what's on my heart now? Let's pop that down. Let's pop up some other stuff here. There's been a whole bunch of buzz, let's say, on the internet around this idea of the trident. And Dabu 7 is a guy that follows the news and tracks these theories down, and debunks some and exposes others. But in the last several days here, we've got the Malaysian flight that went missing, however many days ago that was now, 9-10 days ago. And it was noted that it's got the symbol of a trident on its tail. We had a very prominent commercial from Maserati that happened during the Super Bowl, and with kind of a spooky little kid saying that, they'll wait until the big giants are sleepy and then they'll attack. And Maserati's symbol is the trident. And then we had the attack up in the Ukraine, or however you want to look at it. CIA instigating the Maidan rebels into an overthrow of the government, that version of it, or if you want to focus on the Russians coming into the Crimea. Regardless, the symbol of Ukraine is the trident. And then Dabu 7 here got a post from one of his followers about this, just got erected apparently across from New York City, 2 trident statues in honor of September 11th. And, why is this a big deal? Well, for me, it's not a big deal just because these are all connected, apparently symbolically, with potentially very nefarious things going on. But the trident goes all the way back to the original mystery religion in Babylon. And I've hammered on this in a lot of videos, but there's so much noise out there. Um, some of it, like this, isn't really noise, it's just chasing the current events, but the meaning potentially is lost. And the meaning is where I go, and then we compare that to the Bible, and that's the point of view of this whole YouTube channel is what's the Bible say, especially about the last days. And so let's track this back a little bit. The first thing that you can do, and it doesn't take a rocket scientist to do this, is you can look at some of the symbology in the Catholic Church, again, Catholic folks that see this for the first time. I grew up Catholic. This isn't about the people. It's about pointing out what happened inside of, what the Catholic Church represents. And yeah, the folks within the Catholic Church are being deceived because what it outwardly appears it is not at all what the church and especially the hierarchy is there about. And so what I want to just point out, and I've done videos on symbolism before, but you can see here you got the trident, and this comes out of the ancient um, Babylonian original religion that was set up by Semiramis and Nimrod right after the flood. Well, it says right there, right here, and the straight pointy part is of course the phallus, and the curvy thing is representing the female. Um, and it's just that's what it is. Now, if you go in here, you can look at you know the mark of the beast, paganism in the Catholic Church. Well, this is a Catholic um, statue, and you can see here is the exact same trident, right? So this is not Mother Mary and baby Jesus. This is Semiramis and Tammuz, and there's your trident symbol right there. And she, from the Bible, it's in Jeremiah, but she's also known as the Queen of Heaven, which was what the ancient Jews started worshiping. Um, and we'll look at some related passages to that, but therein lies the pagan religion that goes all the way back to ancient Babylon, and it's Satan worship. And it's just it is. If you track this back, it's Nimrod potentially was even, according to some pagan tradition, the progenitor, and I'm not sure how this worked because he was a descendant of Ham and Cush, but um, his progenitor was supposedly even Satan. So again, how exactly does that work? Maybe it's not true, but he definitely had a priesthood and a mystery, or the religion that they set up was the original pagan religion, and all the artifacts of it are still available today. And so that's what we got to focus on, because the fallen angels, of course, with the head being Satan of the fallen angels, they were worshiping Satan, and then these fallen angel mating with human women, the Nephilim, Genesis 6 giants, follow that through Genesis 10, and then all the way through. There's dozens and dozens of passages. I tried to catalog them. I had dozens of them, and I missed a bunch. And we'll take a look at one of them I missed here in a few minutes. Long story short, that's, the pagan satanic worship started originally with these Nephilim. And, we went into Numbers 24 and 25, and we saw how that was what Balak and Balaam were plotting against what the Nephilim kings to introduce to the Jewish people as Joshua was about to lead them into the promised land of Canaan. This was their plan was to corrupt their religion, corrupt their faith, and get them to worship, you know, Baal or in this case, Baal represented Nimrod, who was the head priest of Satan worship. So you can dig through that, but I just want to make the tie for you that you've got the trident here is tied to Semiramis and Tammuz, and I'm sorry to drag that out, but there's so much in the news right now that the trident is significant. Don't get caught up in just the fact that this is New World Order, conspiracy stuff. It's really not a conspiracy. Something's happening here, and the trident appears to be tied to it, okay? But what is it tied to? It's tied to satanic worship. There's the point, double underline, follow it through. This is the program of the ages coming to fruition as you'd expect in the last days. Okay, so we nailed on that. Now something weird happened today. A very high-ranked article actually in that Before It's News website linked to InfoWars, and various people have different opinions here about Alex Jones. They had a great article on here, and now it's pulled down. And literally, this happened, got pulled down maybe at 6 p.m. I want to say Central. Today is 3/18, 2014. And what it did is it went into what happened with this missing Malaysian jet and how it very, very likely ended up um, in Diego Garcia, which is a U.S. military base that was across the Indian Sea. And they give all sorts of reasons why they're sure that happened. And it had this really interesting twist. And I wonder if this is why it was pulled down. But they noted that the cargo in that plane was actually the cargo that came off of the ship. I'll follow this through, um, where the two Navy SEALs had just been executed in this ship. And what the InfoWars article said is those Navy SEALs were actually subcontractors of one of these firms that the defense U.S. Military uses, kind of these mercenary groups, right? And in particular, this group was used to protect nuclear and biological, radiological sensitive cargo. And so if you want to connect the dots here, that was in this article that was removed. You've got a ship that was being guarded by two ex-Navy SEALs contracted from this mercenary group out of the U.S. that was guarding something that ended up being cargo that got loaded onto the Malaysian plane. And even the Malaysian uh, government and the security people had been warned by Russia that there might be something in the cargo hold before that plane took off. And yet, it took off and got diverted. And what did we have after the cargo potentially was loaded? You had the Navy SEALs found supposedly overdosed or whatever the story was, but they were very likely murdered. And these were the two guys that, of course, knew what was in the cargo hold, knew what got loaded onto that Malaysian plane. And that's why this is so pertinent right now. Now, you track back in that article, who was this security firm that these two Navy SEAL guys were from? Well, it's the Trident Group. I'm not sure how many people have pulled that all together. I mean, I'm sure they pulled together the fact that it was the Trident Group, and the Trident is now being found all over the place. But, just think about it in terms of the symbology. This is all purposeful in my book. This, it represents, Satan's ruling over the world. And if you want to Google any of this, you'll see what I mean. Is the trident shows up, you'll see Nimrod shows up, and all sorts of military aircraft. Um, Even the Trident shows up with Nimrod on military aircraft, and so this is all part of you want to say the hidden hand that is really coming out of the Vatican, but it's running our military, it's running our CIA, it's running all these contracted mercenary groups that have upset Syria, have upset Egypt, on, and now they're up in the Ukraine. So that's that. Now I want to take a look at some passages that kind of, this is where I like to go. We've got in Revelation 2, well, in Revelation 3, you've got the seven churches. And yes, I'm definitely on board with saying that they do represent the predominant church ages over time. And, here the Church of Pergamos represented that time right around when Constantine merged the pagan religion. This is the same satanic uh, roots that go all the way back to the ancient Babylonian uh, pagan religion, merged it into what was then the burgeoning Christian faith. Instead of persecuting the Christians, he tried to align and adopt Christian belief into the pagan system, and then that eventually became the Catholic Church, which is represented by the Church of Thyatira in these letters. Let's just read this down now. The angel of the Church of Pergamos, right? These things that saith, which have the sharp sword with two edges. I know thy works and where thou dwellest, even where Satan's seat is, and thou holdest fast my name, and hast not defiled my faith, even the days when Antipas, my faithful martyr, who was slain among you, where Satan dwelleth. And now you can track that back in Pergamos. There was the temple, was Zeus or Apollo. They might be one and the same. Sorry about that. I could have popped up another window on that, but again, another symbolic reference to Satan, and that's why he's saying it's where Satan's seat was. And guess what? There was a priesthood of the temple of Zeus or Apollo, and we'll get into that in a few minutes as well. But I have a few things against thee, because thou hast there them that hold to the doctrine of Balaam, which taught Balak to cast a stumbling block before the children of Israel, eating things sacrificed to idols and committing fornication. And that's exactly what was happening with the ancient pagan religion. When I told you that the trident, the middle prong, represented the uh, male, just say that, and the curvy lines were the female, you understand that the actual sexual fornication stuff goes all the way back to the original Babylonian religion. And of course, it was given by Satan and the fallen angels that came with them, and they were the ones that bred with the women, created the Nephilim, and you can track that all the way through. And we're going to take a look at a few more passages, just so you know I didn't leave the rails. So hast thou to hold the doctrine of the Nicolaitans, which thing I hate, and a lot of debate on this, but I like the interpretation. It says Nico in Greek is rule over, and Laitans laity. So the hierarchical church, you can read into that. There's other potential references for that, but it fits with what happened with the formation of the church. You moved, as Christianity was adopted, you moved from house church underground, and when it stopped being persecuted, you started seeing churches being built and the hierarchy of the Catholic Church being set up. And so you see that, which he hates. Repent, or else I'll come to you quickly and fight against them with the sword of my mouth, which we know is the word. He that hath an ear, let him hear what the Spirit say unto the churches. To him that overcometh, I will give to eat of the hidden manna, and will give him a white stone, and in this stone a new name written, which no man knoweth, saving he that receiveth. And unto the angel of the church of Thyatira write these things, saith the Son of God, who has eyes like unto a flame of fire, and his feet are like brass. Now, fire is definitely, we know that our works at the Bema Seat are burned up by fire if they weren't from God. And we know brass is the metal of judgment in the Bible. And so this whole thing is about judgment. I know that works, charity, service, faith, and patience, and that works in the last to be more than the first. Notwithstanding, I have a few things against thee, because thou sufferest that woman Jezebel, which calleth herself a prophetess, to teach and to seduce my servants, to commit fornication, and to eat things sacrificed to idols. Well, we just read that up there, that was what was going on with Balaam and Balak. Okay. I gave her space to repent of her fornication. She repented not. And behold, I will cast her into a bed with them that commit adultery with her, and into great tribulation. Now there's a promise, right? There's if you're into the pagan worship part of this Church of Thyatira, not everybody is, but those that adopt the pagan worship within the Church of Thyatira go into the great tribulation, except they repent of their deeds. And I will kill her children with death, and all the churches shall know that I am he which searcheth the reins and hearts, and will give unto every one according to your works. But unto you I say, and to the rest of Thyatira, as many as not have this doctrine, which not knowing the depths of Satan, okay, as they speak, I will put upon you none other burden, but them which ye have already hold fast till I come. Okay. So this is really important if you ask me, because you clearly have the things that were established early on from the pagan religion, and I believe Pergamos, Thyatira maybe it was, means mixed marriage. Um, Pergamos, like we said, was the original pagan temple that was there for Zeus or Apollo. Boy, I wish I could remember which one that was. But it also had a priesthood, and that priesthood, if you track through history, was the priesthood that ended up in Rome that became the Roman Catholic Church. And so, whether you want to call them the priests of Baal or whether you want to just call them the satanic priesthood, that's who that is that went down into Rome. So that's historical. So this is really key, though. This is the ancient satanic worship, and it's being embedded into the church. Now, I just want to go back here and just remind us that this is scriptural in terms of Old Testament as well. In 1 Kings 18, and it came to pass when Ahab saw Elijah, that Ahab said unto him, Art thou he that troubleth Israel? And he said, I have not troubled Israel, but thou and thy father's house, in that ye have forsaken the commandments of the Lord, and thou hast followed Balaam. Okay? Well, what did he do? Now therefore send and gather me all of Israel under Mount Carmel, and the prophets of Baal, 450 of the prophets of the groves, 400 which eat at Jezebel's table. Okay, and so we knew back here, Jezebel specifically is being referenced, that suffered that woman Jezebel. Now surely there was a woman, who knows if her name was actually Jezebel, but it's not the same biblical Jezebel. And we know that some of this language is symbolic in its usage, like the sword that comes out of Jesus' mouth and the like. So if Jezebel's being used symbolically, it harkens back to the original Jezebel, and we're talking about the same thing, the ancient Baal worship, which is the stumbling block of the children of Israel. Right, and this is and we're being told here, it's what Balaam originally cast in front of the children of Israel. We'll take a look at that in a minute. And so she was, basically the one trying to corrupt Ahab into getting the children of Israel to recommit to worship of, well, he already had worship Baal, and Baal is another name that, when you track it back, gets you back to Nimrod, who, like I say, was the original one that set up the mystery religions of Babylon, the pagan religions, which was Satan worship. All right, I just want to put a fine point onto this, because a lot of people get hung up with the Catholic Church. The Catholic Church is significant, and we saw that in Revelation 2 and 3. We saw this, the satanic worship things were brought into the Church of Thyatira and codified more or less. And so, yes, all roads lead to Rome, definitely. But what we need to understand is Rome is not an end to itself. Rome is just the current seat of Satan, and the Satan worship practices go all the way back to that original Nimrod, Semiramis, and Tammuz. That is why you're seeing the trident popping up all over the place, is Satan's about to rise again. So let's not get lost. I mean, yes, the control system is coming through the Vatican, but the Vatican is also anticipating the arrival of our space brothers, and they're going to baptize them. And they've already declared that they weren't part of the fall of man, and so they're going to be superior in doctrine um, to what was in the Gospels, right? So we're being set up big time for something here, and we got to watch the deception. So we're sticking with the Bible because we know that this is true. Now, I made the assertion that the fallen angels mating with the women, the Genesis 6 giants, the Nephilim that were created, were the original carriers of the satanic worship system out of Babylon. I'm going to hopefully tie those together here in the next couple of passages. We just talked about Balaam and Balak being those that the doctrines they carried was the thing that caused the stumbling block for the children of Israel, and it was repeated again here in Revelation 2. Now we're going to go back and trace this back one more step. In Joshua, so this Joshua brought the children of Israel into the land of Canaan. Here we see a little reference back to, and Balak the son of Zippor, king of Moab, rose and war against Israel and sent and called Balaam the son of Beor to curse you. But I would not hearken unto Balaam, therefore he blessed you still. So I delivered you out of his hand. And you went over Jordan and came into Jericho. See, if you want to read this story, it's in Numbers 24 and 25. Came into Jericho, and the men of Jericho fought against you, the Amorites and the Perizzites and the Canaanites and the Hittites and the Girgashites and the Hivites and the Jebusites, and I delivered them into your hand. Now, why is this so significant? Well, plenty of people have traced now this history of the fallen angels mating with the women, generating the Nephilim giants, and these are the tribes and people that that had these Nephilim kings over them, the Amorites, the Canaanites, right? All these. So, and I sent hornet before you and drove them out before you, even the two kings of the Amorites, but not with thy sword nor thy bow. And we're going to get into this. And I've given you a land for which you did not labor, and cities which you built not, and you dwelt in them, of the vineyards and the olives which you planted not to eat. And now therefore fear the Lord and serve him in sincerity and truth, and put away the gods of your fathers served on the other side of the flood. Okay. Um, Now we just gotta consider what this says here. I actually stopped the recording for a sec to pop up a couple of things because we got to drill into this and we'll see something fairly interesting. So let's just finish this off though. And in Egypt and serve ye the Lord. And if it seem evil unto you to serve the Lord, choose you this day whom you will serve, whether the gods which your fathers served that were on the other side of the flood, or the gods of the Amorites, in whose land ye dwell. But as for me and my house, we will serve the Lord. So now the trick is recognizing that something's going on here with these gods that were served on the other side of the flood. Now this is New King James Version. Let me show you a little bit of a comparison just so you can get into this a bit. Now I'll pick on the first verse 14 that mentioned the flood. The New International Version. Now fear the Lord and serve him with all faithfulness. Throw away the gods your ancestors worshiped beyond the Euphrates River and in Egypt and serve the Lord. So the other side of the flood is translated to Euphrates River in the New International. In the New Living Version, same, Euphrates River. Um, um, and in the English Standard Version, they just say beyond the river. And sorry about that. And the river capitalized a lot of times refers to the Nile, which is in Egypt. And I think that's why they did it that way. And so there's a little bit of you know, controversy here. You can see almost all of them are translating Euphrates River, Euphrates River. Um, let's see here. King James says flood. We just looked at that. Uh, the Holman says Euphrates. The International Standard says Euphrates. Well, to me, that whether we're talking about the other side of the flood or the other side of the Euphrates River, it leads to the same darn place. What's on the other side of the Euphrates River? Babylon. um, I can't make the same argument, I guess, if you say the river being discussed as the Nile. But in these other translations, we're talking about the worship practices of the other side of the Euphrates, which is Babylon. And if you want to say on, the other side of the flood, especially if the other side means after the flood, what do you get? You get Babylon. That was the first kingdom with Nimrod that was on the other side of the flood, and you're back to Babylon. Let's just take a look at why there's a little bit of debate in here. I popped this up with this is eSword. I added the Strong's Concordance stuff. The other side, that word translated flood, is Nahar, or I'm not sure if I'm pronouncing it right. Nahar. Um, it translates directly as a stream, but if you look down here, figuratively, prosperity dash flood or river, and so that's why we got the confusion sitting there. But when it talks about the flood or the Euphrates and in Egypt, that makes sense to me because if we remember, the Egyptians had adopted all pagan practices come from the ancient original Babylonian satanic worship system that was set up by Nimrod Semiramis. And so in Egypt, and now if you want to look at the way the little Illuminati pop stars use the Egyptian symbols today, it's the same symbols. The Eye of Horus, right? That's the same. They talk about Isis, and they talk about, again, referring to Illuminati, and especially the pop stars that are in music. Osiris is big. Eye of Horus, Isis. It's all names that go back to that original Nimrod, Semiramis, and the kid, which was Tammuz. So, what's the point of all this I'm dragging you through? It's the worship practices go back to the root of pagan worship, which was evil. And did other videos where we went through Deuteronomy 2, which references the descendants of Esau running into the giants, the Zimimums and the Emumums, and that were on the east side of Mount Seir. And then when we read in Joshua, I think Joshua 11, I did a same video on talking about Mount Seir. It was the um, Amorites and the Moabites, and that were planning, Balaam and Balak, that were planning to deceive and corrupt the Jewish people as they were coming toward the promised land. And we saw, and I made reference to that in Numbers 24 and 25, and they were going to do that by implementing their worship system, which was rife with sexual practices and the like. And you can read that for yourself. And then, of course, when Joshua got them over into the land of Canaan, the command was not to adopt any of the worship practices of the peoples that will surround you, and that's exactly what they did. Now, in the land of Canaan, the names change, after the flood, and then you get the Tower of Babel. We get the earth was divided by tongue or by people group, and according to extra biblical sources, there were 70 groups that were spread out throughout the land by tongue and by tribe. And that's why you get so many names for the same original pagan practices that came out of Nimrod and Semiramis and Tammuz. And so the point here is that that worship practice got carried forward into all the lands these tribes went. And in particular, um, the worship practice is being warned about here. And I'm going to show you one other passage where it's specifically talking about the Amorites, which were mentioned here, um, is about these Nephilim giants. Now, if you think about it, the fallen angels mating with human women, producing these Nephilim offspring, the fallen angels, they're directly in allegiance to Satan. So, of course, the worship practice, the linkage would probably be strongest with these Nephilim hybrid. And indeed, I think I mentioned this, there's pagan websites that try and even claim that Nimrod was the high priest of Satan, and possibly Satan being his progenitor, which I'm not sure I can buy that biblically. But regardless, that's why you have the Babylonian priesthood manifesting over time as different things. Dagon is another reference. You see it showing up, of course, in the Catholic Church. I hate to say it, but that's what the priesthood is. It's the Pergamum priesthood from the Temple of Zeus that moved down into Rome, and it was reestablished as the Holy Roman Catholic Church and priesthood. And so there's the tie. Now, if we go to Amos 2, let's see if I can do this quick. Um, I just want to read one sentence here that helps drag this together. Now, Amos 2, yet I destroyed the Amorite before them. And again, this is a reference looking back at what happened with the Israelites coming into the promised land. Yet I destroyed the Amorite before them, whose height was like the height of cedars and was strong as the oaks. Yet I destroyed his fruit from above and his roots from beneath. And we're already going long on this video, but I'll just refer you back to Ezekiel 31. And when I was doing the Mount Seir videos, I think I made reference to this as well. This roots from beneath is, being satanically empowered from the abyss, and the fruit above, or the boughs that go above, are the pride and lifted up picture you're getting from, what's called the cedar of Lebanon, which clearly is picturing Nimrod, and I would argue the Antichrist fits that picture. And so there's where I think we start to see the grand scheme coming together. How did the satanic worship practices spread throughout the whole world? It manifests in these secret societies, and yet here we're at the end of the age, and all of a sudden we see, amazing things happen, like people rejecting God left and right. Look at what's going on with the government in the U.S. People rejecting Christ, kick the Bible out of schools, embrace homosexuality, all these things that were part of the pagan worship practices, abortion, you can relate directly to child sacrifice. The whole thing is coming full circle. And for that reason, for many, I believe the Antichrist has some tie into these ancient Nephilim, including biblically in the Old Testament, the Antichrist is referred to as the Assyrian, which is super intriguing. So I just thought I'd get this out here. We got a whole bunch of things going on right now, and I hope a little bit of this study was a blessing, so you can go back and maybe dig in some yourself. I guess if the Lord willing, and until next time, thanks for watching.